Hey folks, what if I told you some of my most powerful moments of when I learned about worship didn't happen in a church? They happened swinging an axe, shoveling horse poop, serving a family, and working my butt off. This didn't happen with loud music. It didn't happen with hands raised in the air. There was no light show. There was no fog machines. There was no worship team leading me into a 10-minute bridge. It was just me, a pile of farm work, and God. Because worship just isn't about singing. It's not something that you go to. Did you know that the Hebrew word for worship is avad, which means to work and serve? About 11 years ago, a family I knew asked if I could help take care of their elderly mother and their father. This is a couple who had been like grandparents to me growing up as a kid. And she now had Alzheimer's, and he was sinking into a deep depression because of it. And they needed someone to stay on their farm for a few months and like help with meals and the day-to-day things, because the situation was overwhelming for their daughter and the rest of the family who had to take care of them on that property. And I thought I was doing them a favor, and I didn't realize that God was setting me up for something really special. And that few months turned into 2 years out there, and 2 years of somewhat isolation, but just hard work and quiet service. A lot of laughs, a lot of shared home-cooked meals, good conversation, riding horses, building trails, staying up all night, looking at a big sky full of stars, all that good stuff. But those years became this time of deep transformation for me. And it was just through mowing the grass and cutting down trees and splitting cords of firewood and fixing what was broken, just painting lots of things and repairing fences and rebuilding things that had been neglected and caring for grandma. And I made meals for her, for both of us, and I cleaned the house, and we probably played hundreds of Scrabble games together. And I just stayed present with her through her frustration of forgetting more and more stuff each day. And through it all, I began to realize something, that this was worship. And this is not the kind that I grew up with in the church setting, in the thing that we call church. And, it's definitely not the kind that gets an applause or has a platform or any kind of stage, but it's just real worship. And I think it's the kind that God sees, because it doesn't demand a microphone. It demands your heart. And later on, when I read about that word avad and what it means to work and serve, suddenly it just clicked for me, because God wasn't just with me when I prayed or opened my Bible. He was with me the whole time I was there, through everything I did. When I fixed a gate, when I chopped wood in the cold, when I made a meal, or when I cleaned the house, He was with me in the middle of my work, which had become my worship. And it was really sweet. The whole time it was really sweet. I just talked with God quietly, and every day I was just grateful, expressed my gratitude to Him, and just soaked in the peace that I had and in the work that I was doing. And I realized that this season was meant to be, and this experience, this kind of intimacy with God, showed me how I can worship in many different ways. And so this farm became kind of like holy ground to me, not because it was super beautiful or peaceful, but because I had peace, and because this work that I was doing was refining me, and it was taking me into this season of how to learn how to abide in Christ. And this service humbled me, and it exposed selfishness in me, and it taught me how to let go of things. And in that quiet place, I heard God's voice clearer than ever, because this was where I was supposed to be. And this was Him saying, this is an opportunity I'm giving you to learn how to trust me. Not in some loud thing, not in some hype thing, just in stillness. And God wasn't just working through me, He was working in me, and He was changing me. So, little plug here. that whole season and what was before and what came after, it takes up a powerful chapter in my upcoming book, Forged in the Fire. And this is kind of like a survival story. It's a raw account of me living out in my old cabin and going through 3 near-death experiences. And it goes into my journey of overcoming 17 years of addiction to cannabis, and how cannabis gave me a complete mental health collapse. And it's also the story of betrayal and how that sabotaged my career as a paramedic, and how God used it all to refine my faith and to surrender and to experience what it's like to hear him in the wilderness, And so I talk about this 2 years on the farm and this time of worship and work and service. And it was just true and beautiful. And I say true because, do you remember the Samaritan woman at the well? And Jesus was there, and she said, do we worship on the mountain or in the temple? And he said, neither, because the time has come for spirit and truth worship. And that's what God's looking for. He's not looking for some big show or some big performance. It's not this big feel-good, moment with lights and fog machines, but it's spirit, truth, and sacrifice. Just like when Abraham took up Isaac onto the mountain, he told his servants, we are going to go up and worship. And what did that worship look like? It looked like surrender. It looked like laying something down. Because I think that worship should cost something. And maybe today it's not putting your son on the chopping block, but maybe it's your pride. Maybe you have this need to be seen. Maybe it's your desire to control things. Maybe it's forgiveness that you've been withholding, or some dream that you've been trying to force, or your refusal to serve in a season that feels thankless. Whatever it is, because worship is where you stop striving and you start surrendering. Okay? So, yeah, that's all I want to say, folks. Forged in the Fire launches July 20th on Amazon, and links will be in all my videos. So if you ever wondered where God is in your ordinary or your painful or your unseen service, this book is for you. And if you got something out of this, subscribe, be the first one to grab my book when it drops. And if you know somebody who would appreciate this, share it with them. Pass on the love. There's so many people who want to know who God is. They want to know what it's like to have a relationship with God, and they're curious about him. And so they go into a church and they see this scripted performance, either if it's a traditional way of singing hymns or like rock concert church or somewhere in the middle, and they just don't want any of it. And they think, if I have to do this every week in order to have a relationship with God, it's probably not going to happen. And I totally get it, because that's the way I felt when I was in that situation. So this might encourage people to say, hey, yeah, you don't have to sing songs loudly in a big group of people to worship God and to come into his presence. So maybe share it with somebody who worships in their own way. And because what they're doing, might be more sacred than they realize. And it might inspire them to steward the things that they've been given to manage in a sacrificial posture of surrender. Because God sees you swinging that axe. He sees your caregiving. He sees you at your job, the way that you parent your kids. And if it's in a situation that he's put you in, and it's an opportunity to work and serve, and you do it faithfully and in spirit and truth, he calls that worship. All right. Have a good night, guys.